Hello guys, welcome to a new video of Fischer series. Today look at round number 2 of the US Chess Championship 959. It's Fischer against Byrne, and this is going to be a really nice tactical game which I can't wait to show you. Byrne has the white pieces and he starts with d4. Now we have knight to f6 by Fischer, c4, and usually Fischer plays g6 here, going into the King's Indian, but here he plays e6. And after knight to c3 we can either go into the Queen's Gambit declined with d5, or into the Nimzo Indian with bishop to b4. But here Fischer plays d5, which already surprises me, because till now he never really played the Queen's Gambit declined in a major tournament. But okay, let's see what happens. Now Byrne can play knight to f3, bishop to g5, or take the pawn, but Byrne takes the pawn. And usually black takes back with the pawn to still gain control over the e4 square. But here he takes with the knight. And actually the best move here is to just push e4, and after knight takes, pawn takes, white has a lot of central grip on the position. But for some reason after knight takes d5, Byrne doesn't play e4, he plays knight to f3, and now c5 by Fischer. And actually you should never really take this pawn, since after takes we develop the bishop with tempo, or we can even take the knight, because after queen takes, king takes, pawn takes, we have bishop takes c5, and white has an isolated pawn here, which can be attacked later on. And okay, we cannot castle, but just simply king to h7, rook to d8, and black's doing fine. So Byrne doesn't take, he plays e3 here. Now we have knight to c6 and bishop to c4. And here you can play bishop to e7, but then we have bishop takes, and pawn takes c5, and now black is the one with an isolated pawn. So that's why after bishop to c4, Fischer takes the c3 knight. Now we have a b takes c3, and now bishop to e7. Byrne castles, and Fischer castles as well. So till now it looks really equal. I would say white's a bit better, since he can push e4 later on and have a lot of central grip on the position. And after castles, we have queen to e2, b6. Purpose of b6 is to bring the bishop to b7, since it's blocked by the e6 pawn. And on b7 it would have a lot of control over those light squares. Now we have rook to d1. The rook is looking towards the queen, so first queen to c7, and now e4. Bishop to b7 by Fischer, and bishop to e3. You can see Byrne's position, he has a lot of control over the center, his pieces are activated, the rooks are connected here. He just has a really pleasant position. And here the best move is rook f to d8, but Fischer here plays rook a to c8. And that actually allows d5 now. Since after e takes, pawn takes, Fischer has to play knight to a5 to attack the bishop, but simply bishop to d3. And it looks like a free pawn, but now after bishop takes, we have bishop takes h7, king takes h7, rook takes d5, the rook is coming towards h5, the bishop is looking here, the knight can jump in, the queen is looking towards h5 square. This is just beautiful for white. So that's why d5 is a strong move. But here Byrne plays bishop to d3. After bishop to d3, Fischer takes the d pawn. We have c takes, and now he plays bishop to a3. Why is bishop to a3 a good move? Well, if you do not play bishop to a3 and for example h6, then we have rook a to c1 looking towards the queen again. Queen has to go to b8. We can bring the bishop back to b1 to defend this pawn and threaten pushing again. And this is just a better position for white. So after takes, we have bishop to a3 to gain control over the c1 square. Now we have e5, which is the first little inaccuracy by Byrne, since after e5, Fischer now plays knight to b4, getting more control over the c line with his knight and his queen and his rook. And this light squared bishop just came alive after e5, since now we are looking towards those light squares. Okay, knight to b4. Well, Byrne only has one move here to keep the game equal, and he actually finds it. For example, if you play bishop to d2 attacking this knight, Now we have knight takes d3, queen takes d3, bishop takes f3, queen takes f3. Now bishop to b2, rook to b1, and bishop takes d4. And black's a pawn up, and this is just way better. But Byrne doesn't play bishop to d2. He plays knight to g5, going for his own attack. And after knight to g5, Fischer plays h6, saying, okay, what's your knight doing here? I'm just going to kick it away. But now we have bishop h7 check, king to h8, and queen to h5. So white's really getting his pieces towards the king now. So Fischer gets a bit worried. He brings his knight back. Now we have bishop to d3, queen to e7. So Fischer is slowly bringing his pieces towards the king's side. But now simply knight to h7, attacking this rook. But Fischer here has only one move to keep the game equal. If he plays rook to g8, he's actually losing, because now we have bishop takes h6, g takes h6, and we will play knight to f6, attack this pawn, and just win the game. But after knight to h7, Fischer takes the bishop here, which is the best move and the only move to keep the game equal. Now we have f takes e3, and now rook f to d8. Rook to f1 and rook to d7. Since this pawn was attacked twice, we have to defend this twice as well. And now h4. And h4 is a really nice move. Well, why is it a really nice move? For example, if you play rook to d1, then we would have rook to c3, and you cannot bring this knight back anymore. Since after knight g5, we just simply take it. And if we do not move the knight, we will take this bishop, and the knight's going to fall as well. But by playing h4, if you play rook to c3, now we can play knight to g5. Fischer here plays rook to c3, but that's actually not a good move now at all. Better would have been queen to b4, knight to g5, queen to b2, threatening checkmate here. So you have to play something like queen to bishop to e2, and the game still goes on. But after rook to c3, knight to g5, just giving away this bishop, Fischer just takes it. But now we have rook takes f7, attacking the queen. And here Fischer's like, okay, let me just threaten this then. But simply e4, blocking it. And now Fischer is in a lot of trouble. There's only one move to keep the game going on, which is king to g8. And after rook takes, now those two pieces cannot come in. But Fischer plays queen takes f7, and after knight takes f7, rook takes f7, queen takes f7, he's just losing. Because it's a rook and a rook against two bishops and a queen. But let's just see how the game goes on. Now we have bishop takes e4, rook to e1. Here just take the pawn. We have two passers, make another queen and win the game. But okay, Byrne plays rook to e1. Now we have rook takes g2 check, king to f1, and bishop to d5. So now we don't have passes anymore. And okay, Fischer has some play in the position. Rook to e2, wanting to exchange the rooks. Fischer doesn't want that, goes rook to g4. Now we have rook to c2, wanting to come in here. Fischer plays king to h7 and h5. Now rook to g5, threatening rook f5, winning the queen. And in this position, Byrne makes a mistake. He plays king to e2. Well, actually, he should have just taken the pawn and not be scared of those checks. Because after rook f5 check, king to e2, bishop f3 check, king to d3, bishop takes h5, it's just a fine position. You can play rook to g2, threaten this. So black has to play bishop to f8 and simply play queen to d7, win this pawn, have two passers, and just win the game. Because black's position is really passive here. But for some reason, Byrne plays king to e2 here, which gives away his advantage. Because after king to e2, we can now start giving checks. Rook c2 check, king to d3, rook to g2, rook to g3 check, king to e2, rook to g2 check, king to e3. And we can even take this rook here, since after queen g6 check, king to h8, queen takes rook, this position is actually holding. We can now play b5, later on win this pawn, and there's nothing you can do here. You can maybe give a check, king to h7, and give some more checks, but it just doesn't work. You can try to maybe win this pawn. So for example, queen to b8, but now simply a6. And this position is actually holding. Look at the engine, it's completely equal. So after giving some checks, again rook to g5, threatening this, it's just a draw. And it's a bit sad because Byrne played so well in this game, and he just gives away this position by playing king to e2, in which we have a lot of checks, and even after giving away the rook, it's just an equal game. Fischer has a fortress. Maybe Byrne was in time trouble, or I mean, it's hard to understand why he played queen to e2 here, simply taking the pawn and just playing it out and just winning this game would have been really easy if he had time. But I'm guessing he was in time trouble. But yeah, it was just a beautiful game, a lot of tactics. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If so, please like, subscribe or comment, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye bye.